So this is video number 3 of the Lowland Kids Sweater Romper video, and I'm going to do sleeves here, or cuffs for the sleeves. So first I'm going to find the center of the sleeve and mark it on both sides. So these are both sleeves. That center has been marked. So I'm going to construct my cuff, checking to make sure that I have wrong sides together, using that elastic showing on the wrong side. I'm going to match my right sides together, and then I'm going to fold it in half and close up and fold the cuff at the same time. I'm going to give it a couple stitches, put my needles down, and then tuck my tails underneath the presser foot and lock in those threads so they don't come undone. I'm going to do the same thing with the other cuff, and again check to make sure I have the correct sides together, right sides together, fold it in half, and give it a couple stitches. I'm going to grab my tails, tuck them underneath my presser foot, and lock those in place. I don't want anything ever coming unraveled on the inside of the garment where nobody would notice it until you have a massive hole. So I always lock my threads in place. Now, when I'm opening it up after I've stitched it together, I'm going to do one side from the right and one side from the left, and I'll show you why in a minute. So this one I'm going to go for the right side. I'm going to open that up. I'm going to find the seam and mark the center while I'm doing this. Set it aside. Now this one, because I went on the right side on the last one, I'm going to do the left side on this one. I'm going to find that seam and mark the center. So now with all of my garments, all of my pieces, I will always put the top of the seam, the nice smooth side of the seam. The other side is smooth too, but it's just not as pretty in my opinion. So I use the pretty top side of my stitching towards the back. This is what's going to be exposed when you look at the inside of the garment, inside out. So I think it's important to make sure it looks nice on the inside too. So I'm going to mark that in place, going towards the back of the garment. So this is the top of the garment, this is the back of the garment. Now, because my sleeves are mirror images of each other, one is going to go one way and one is going to go the other way. So that's why we wanted to do our sleeves one way on one, the other way on the other. This one, we have the stitching on the inside is going towards the left. This piece, my seam is going towards the right. So this sleeve matches this cuff. So I can put them together and nest those seams up perfectly with one seam going one way and one seam going the other way. I'm going to match up those center pieces, clip them in place. And then here we have a much smaller cuff than we have sleeve. So I'm going to stretch the cuff to match the sleeve. I'm not going to stretch the sleeve at all. And I'm going to make that stretch so that everything matches. And you can either put a clip or I'm just going to use my fingers. So that way I know this is evenly stretched. I'm going to take my clip off, matching up those nested seams, and I'm going to hold that with my fingers. So I'm using my fingers as clips. I'm going to give it the proper stretch without stretching the sleeve and give it a couple stitches, and I'm going to let go. I'm now going to grab the middle and give that a good stretch until my cuff matches my sleeve. And then continue around until I get to that middle portion. Once I get to the middle, I need to kind of readjust my garment. I need to remove the clip. And again, I'm going to stretch the cuff until it matches the sleeve, not stretching any more than that. And once I get to the seam, this is where the seam is, I'm going to go just over the seam and sew off. Find my needle threads, separate, and give it a couple overhands. Usually I do 3, so 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and we've got our cuff nicely stitched in place in the round. Now we're gonna go and do the other side before I turn it and show you how it all looks. Again, this is the top or the front. This is the front, this is the top stitch, this is the back with the bottom of the stitching. So we want the top of the stitching to go towards the back. I'll clip that in place. And because this is the opposite sleeve with the opposite cuff, these ones are going to match up. And if for any reason it didn't and you accidentally did the wrong way, the only thing you have to do is just flip it the other direction, and then now your seam is on the other side. So it's really easy to fix it if you've messed that up. So here I'm going to attach my cuff to my sleeve, and again, the seam on the sleeve goes to the right, seam on the cuff goes to the left, and I'm going to nest those up perfectly. Put a clip in place, find my center clips, and clip those together. Whoops. Now again, one more time, I'm going to give it a stretch without stretching the sleeve. So I'm only stretching the cuff. I'm going to mark it with my hand, remove my cuff, make sure that those are still nested, hold it tight with my fingers, and give it that stretch. I'm going to sew over the seam and match my ribbing or my cuff to my sleeve. And continue on till you get to where you started. So over, go over the seam, sew off, and separate my needle threads from my looper threads. Give my 3 overhand knots. And then I will show you how they turned out. So here's the first cuff. It's nice and beautiful and even on all sides. I have my beautiful neckband. And then we have the other sleeve. And again, it's nice and neat and evenly stitched.